Today, I'm going to build my own PC with these products that I have unboxing videos. First things comes first, so I'm going to install the CPU cooler mounter on the motherboard. And first thing you need to do is just flip the motherboard, and now you can see the 4 holes here. So direction is sort of important. So I'm going to install the CPU cooler mount in this direction. And once you are done, just flip the motherboard. Then now you can see the 4 holes again on the front side. So we are going to tighten the screws that come with a CPU cooler. Do not tighten really hard here because you don't want to give a pressure on the motherboard. So my recommendation here is do not use your tool for tightening the screws. Next thing we want to do here is to install the CPU on the motherboard. So first thing you need to do is press here and lift it up. And next thing you want to do is to remove the cover here. And do not throw it away because when you reinstall the CPU later, you want to cover the motherboard with that. As you can see here, there is a triangle, and here also there is a triangle, and there is a dot, and there is a dot here. So do not touch these parts because there are very important pins that you don't want to mess up with. And I'm going to install CPU finally and put the CPU and close the cover like this. And CPU installation is done. And next thing I want to do is to change the location of the fan here to the upper part. This is mainly because I want to install the CPU cooler at this side and GPU cooler at the upper side. And later, I want to do a two-way SLI for the GPU configuration. In there, I want to put another GPU cooler in the upper side. However, right now, I just put this fan to the upper side. And later, I want to change it to the GPU cooler. So I have untied the screws here. The orientation here is really important. So just keep the same orientation. For this case, two fans installed in the front take the air from the outside to the inside, CPU cooler here, and GPU cooler here, and take the air from inside to the outside. So I would like to have this fan also take the air from inside to the outside. Thus, I would like to have the same orientation for the fan as it was when I installed the fans on the upper side. The relocation of the fan is done. Before put the motherboard on the case, I would like to install the pins to support the motherboard. That pins comes with a case, as you can see here. Almost all of the pins you need to have comes with a case. So here I'm trying to find the pins for the motherboard's setup. I found the 7 pins here for mounting the motherboard on the case. So why 7? Okay, as you can see here, 2 pins are already installed here and here. So you just need to install the last part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you need to have the 7 pins. So I'm going to install like one by one here. It was really difficult to tighten the pins here, so I just went out to buy this tool. So, and then I was like able to manage the installation of the pins. And for the GPU installation later, like we need to take this out so that you can install the GPU easily. Next thing I would like to do here is to put the input and output shield. So let me show you the front side. And here, and okay, so the direction here is really important. I'm going to put like with this direction and push hard enough to get it installed. And the installation of the input and output shield is done. And next thing I would like to do is to put the motherboard into here. And first thing you need to do is to find these 9 screws that come with a case. And I'm going to put the motherboard here. And as I explained before, there are 9 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So these 9 holes will go to the 9 pins that are sitting on the case. And finally installed the motherboard here. However, I have not tightened the screws enough, so I'm going to tighten the screws like one by one. And my general recommendation here is the do not like tighten the screws like really hard at the beginning, like kind of doing like one by one, because like that activity, I mean that like behavior will put a lot of pressure at a like small spot on the motherboard, which might cause a problem to the motherboard. The installation of the motherboard on the case is done. Next thing I would like to do is to install the SSD. This one is the Samsung Evo 960 M2 SSD. First thing you need to do is to find these two pins that come with a motherboard. For this motherboard, if you install M2 SSD here, you cannot use SATA 5 and 6. And if you install the M2 SSD here, you cannot use like SATA 1 here. So I'm going to install my SSD to there. So first thing you need to do is to screw these pins to the motherboard. Once you are done with that, there is a notch here and the notch there too. Put the M2 SSD to the slot. And then push the M2 SSD slightly. Then tighten the screw. Here, just like tighten enough. Alright, the installation of the SSD is done. Next thing I would like to do is to install the RAM. Before installing the RAM, you want to lift these up. For me, I'm going to install the 4 RAMs, so it doesn't matter where to install. However, if you just want to install the 2 RAMs, you want to install the RAM on the slot 1 and 3, because that will increase the speed of the RAM. So let's install the RAM here. There is a notch here, and comparing the notch on the slot, you can find the right direction. So let me install the first RAM. And push hard until you hear the click sound. Let's install the second RAM here. Here, you want to push hard to install the RAM properly. So you will also hear the click sound here. And this is the last RAM I want to install for my PC. And finally, installation of the RAM is done. The next thing I would like to do is to install the power supply. For that, we need to take these parts out. After that, I'm going to unscrew these pins. Then take this part out. And now you can put the power supply into the case. To properly locate the power supply, I'm going to tighten the pins to properly locate the power supply in the case. And then the things that you took out, and now you can put it back to the case. And next thing you might want to do is to find these screws that come with a case. And I'm going to put these screws on the fourth side. So this is the first screw that I'm going to tighten. And this is the second one. And third one. And the last one. And the installation of the power supply is done. And next thing you might want to do is to put the SATA box back to the case. And next thing I would like to do is to put the hard drive to the case. Take a one and take the other one. For hard drives, so I bought this WD Red 8 terabytes, and the installation of HDD is very easy. So just like put the HDD on this case, and that's it. It's all done. Just put it back to the case. And another hard drive I bought is the Seagate Barracuda 8 terabytes. And here I'm just like put the HDD to here. And then just put it back to the case. As you can see here, it is very easy to install HDDs to the case. And the installation of HDDs is done. Next thing I would like to do here is to connect the cables to the motherboard, such as the USB 3.0 and audio cable and LED cables. First thing I would like to connect is a USB 3.0 that will go to this port, and the audio cable will go to this port. If I were to connect these cables like directly, it looks really ugly. So I will take these cables back to the case through this hole and then take them to the front. Next thing I would like to show you is how to connect the SATA cables between the motherboard and HDDs. For SATA cables come with a motherboard, and I bought an extra one, so I have 5 SATA cables. Although I have only 2 HDDs, I will connect all of the SATA cables I have to the motherboard so that later I can install the HDDs really easily. Here, port 1 will not work because of the M2 SSD that I installed there. So I will connect the SATA cables from the port 2 to port 6. The total cable I would like to connect to the motherboards is 5. And port 3. And next one is port 4. Just push hard enough to hear the click sound. And now is port 5. And lastly, port 6. You will hear the click sound when you properly install the SATA cables. Next thing I would like to do is to connect the power cable for the HDDs. So as you can see here, one power cable can support 3 HDDs. First, I will connect the power cable to the power supply. I have connected 2 power cables to the power supply. The next thing I would like to do here to connect the mainboard power cable. So this part goes to the motherboard, and this part goes to the power cable. So if I just connect directly, it looks ugly. So I will take it back to the case and take it to the front. So next thing is the CPU power supply. This part goes to here, and that part goes to the power supply. This is the back side of the case. I only have 2 hard drivers, so that these 3 cables, I will just put them into this box. If I can afford like 3 more HDDs, I will show you how I connect the HDDs to these cables. I really hope that happens really soon, but I'm not very sure about that. So right now, just put these cables into the box. It also requires power supply, so put this power cable into the box so that later if I can buy HDDs, I can install them very easily. Alright, let's do the actual installation. So first thing you need to do is to take the SATA cable. As you can see here, there is a L shape, and on the HDD there is also L shape. So just put it to the HDD and push it hard enough to hear click sound. So there is a L shape, and just push hard enough and you can hear the click sound. And here I'm going to zip tie the cables. Next thing I would like to do is to connect the power cables to the HDDs. So as you can see here, there is a L shape. So also there is a L shape on the HDD, so that you can easily connect the power cables to the HDDs by looking at the L shape. And I would like to zip tie the cables. Next thing I would like to do is to take the CPU power supply cable to the front through this hole. However, I do not want the power cable touch this part of the motherboard, so I will try to avoid that area. For the motherboard power supply cable, I will take it to the front through this hole. I have installed the CPU power cable to the motherboard here, and for the mainboard power cable, as you can see here, this part should go to here. So the orientation of the mainboard power cable is important, and push it hard enough to hear the click sound. I said I will take these cables back to the case. However, it is impossible because of the power supply. So I will just connect them directly here. And first thing I would like to connect is the audio cable. This one. This one goes to the here. And if you look it closely, there is no hole here and there is no pin there. So you can find the right port easily. And next thing I would like to connect is a USB 3.0. And as you can see here, there is no hole and there is no pins. So that you can find a right port and right direction very easily. Next thing I would like to do is to connect the panels to the motherboard. It is kind of difficult to show what is going on. So when I open the user manual, so the bottom part is a HLED and top parts PLED and reset and power and SW buttons. So following the user manual, I'm going to connect these panels to the motherboard. So I'm done with connecting all the panels to the motherboard. And next thing I would like to do is to connect the fans to the motherboard. The fans can be connected to here and there. Bottom fan can be connected to the bottom parts. However, top fan cannot be connected to the top parts because of the length of the cable. So when I open the case, I'm going to rotate the fan by 90 degrees so that the cable come out through the top hole. I have untightened all of the screws and rotate the fan, and I can take the cable come out through the top hole and tighten the screws. And do not tighten a screw really hard at one time. I just recommend that you just tighten the screws slowly and step by step. Both cables come out, and bottom fans cable we go to this part, and top fans cable go to that part. The fans cable came out, and this cable goes to this port. And do not worry about where to put the cable. Due to the shape of the cable, this cable can only go one port on that side of the motherboard. The bottom fans cable will go to this port. Here the same things are applied. This cable can only go to a port in this area of the motherboard. We have another fan top here. This cable will go to this port. And next thing I would like to do is to install the CPU cooler. The one I use here is H80i V2 CPU cooler. I'm going to install CPU cooler like in this way. Front fan take air from outside, top fan take air from inside. So this cooler take air from inside too, so that we can have a balanced system. So I'm going to install the CPU fans like this. Here, the location of the fan is really important. So it's better to install like in this way. The installation of the CPU fans is well described in the user manual. I'm going to follow this instruction. The installation of CPU fans is done. For the CPU cooler, so at the beginning of this video, we install the CPU mounter, and there are 4 holes. So I'm going to put these holes to the mounter. Find these nuts, and one thing you might want to remember is do not tighten these nuts with a tool. Just like use hand to tighten the CPU cooler to the motherboard. Next thing we want to do is to connect these cables to the fans that we installed to the CPU radiator. So just connect these two cables like this. And the other cable, I'm going to connect that to this port. And next thing we want to do is to connect this cable. So this part goes to the CPU cooler to here like this. And the other side will goes to this port on the motherboard. As you can see here, there is no hole here and there is no pin there. So you can just connect to like this. However, if we do that, it looks ugly. So I will take the cable back to the case. Next thing I would like to do is to install the GPU. However, before do that, let's take a slot here. Just move the slot to the top. Finally, I attempt to install the GPU. However, there is a problem. So I'm trying to install the GPU like in this way. So as you can see here, the CPU cooler blocked the way that I can install the GPU on the top of the case. Before installing GPU, one thing you want to remember is that push the parts so that when you install GPU, you can hear the click sound. This GPU requires 8 pins. So I'm going to install the 2 VGA cables to the power supply. Finally, we are done with building our own computer. For the GPU fans, I installed that on the top right, and for the fan that was installed in the right, I moved that to the left. As you can see here, I installed two A pins to the GPU. And next thing we want to do is to put the cover on this case and installing window.